The original version of this video was uploaded to Jason Verney's YouTube channel, where it and many other videos, podcasts, snippets and films can be found. That channel can be found at youtube.com/Jason Verney. This is the Not So Korean podcast, and I am Jason Verney.
And this is Timothy Holm.
In this podcast series, we talk to one another, and sometimes with special guests, about what we know about Korea,
what we don't know about Korea,
what we want to know about Korea,
and occasionally what we don't want to know about Korea.
Recording live from UK's KoreaTown itself. That's New Malden and its surrounding areas, which is Europe's biggest Koreatown and the UK's biggest Koreatown, New Malden. We'll kick off this episode with a quick summary of the last few days, or what we've been doing recently, at least. So, what have you been up to lately, Tim?
It's always hard for me to remember what I've done in the past few days here. Not that I've done that many things, but yesterday I was in Kingston, which is very close to New Malden, but the sort of old town Kingston. And they have several Korean restaurants there, and I happened to stop by one called Joa on Castle Street, which is sort of a small restaurant alley in Kingston. And they have a few Asian restaurants there, like Korean, Chinese, Japanese, and one is called Joa or Choa, I think from the Korean meaning good or nice, so it's spelled Joa.
Oh, yeah.
And they had some nice chicken and rice there, or actually it was noodles, sorry. But I mean, it didn't taste that Korean to me personally. I think it's more like Chinese food. But it was still quite tasty, so I'd recommend it. But I think I even might have seen a famous Instagrammer / blogger or vlogger who we know who talks about Korean food quite a bit. But I didn't say hello to this person. But if this person is listening, then shout out to you, and maybe we can have you on our show someday. And so otherwise I've been working on my translation stuff as usual, and I've also finished basically translating a Korean novel into English with my co-translator, Korean lady, very nice woman, and so we just got to grant some funding for that, which
you told me about
I won't go into the details right now until it's finalized.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very good news. So that's the main thing that happened the past week. And how about you, Jason?
Yeah, just to really go over what you've just said about that street. Yeah, there's a few there, isn't there? There's Joa and a couple of others, Hiragyo, I think it is, and
Horangi, which is like tiger in Korean.
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. And there's one, I think there's one or two others. But yeah, that's great. Yeah. And cool. And well done on the translating.
Yeah, thanks.
And what I've been up to, well, basically a few things. I went to the Korean Cultural Centre, probably my second only visit in the last year or so to London, and
when did they reopen?
I think it was when the last, trying to keep up with this, the last phase of the government's plan, but I think it was about 3 weeks ago, was it? I'm not sure. Right. And that was there. I went to the exhibition, which was the Palaces of Joseon.
All right. That looks good. I haven't been there yet, but I hope to get there someday. Yeah. Yeah,
no, it was good actually. I'm not sure if it was what I was expecting, but it was still good. It was really good. It was very colourful. I mean, that's what palaces are, as you know. Yeah. They're also.
When does that finish, by the way?
I think it's August, so we've plenty of time to catch it if you haven't already.
Okay.
In fact, actually, at the end of the show, we'll mention briefly about KCCs and films and London Korean Film Festival briefly. Okay. But a couple of things others, I'll just go swiftly through these. I received the Grass book, which is also related to the Korean Cultural Centre UK, which was the Wianbu or Comfort Women story, graphic novel, which I'm sure aware of, by Kum Suk Gendry Kim.
Oh, yes.
I've never pronounced that name properly. I'm sorry.
I believe the translator is from Vancouver in Canada as well, right?
Yes, that's something we found out, or at least I found out recently.
I'm from near Vancouver in Canada, so yeah, Janet Hong, I think is her name. Yeah,
a fellow Canuck. They call her Canuck. Canuck. Sorry. There you go. That's how much at least I didn't say American.
Yeah, we row a canoe. Yeah, but we're Canucks.
Canucks, almost UK. Can you?
Can you?
Yeah, no, that's cool. And one last thing, I mentioned in the last week's show about the film that I'm making and editing. And I've got about 10 days before I'm submitted to a festival. Right. But I've actually been, I've sort of roped into, I roped someone into helping with their sort of basic being consultant on the translating. The translating was done a while ago. Some of the translating, obviously you've helped me a little bit, but someone in local business has helped me out with that. So a few hours today I've been doing that.
So do you want to mention what the name of the film festival is, or are you not ready to reveal that yet?
Not yet, just in case it all falls through, but I will hopefully in the next episode, because by then I should have submitted or very close to it. It's a short film festival in Korea. That's what I'll say at this point in time.
Right.
So we'll go on to.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about your background and how you got interested in Korea and Korean culture and stuff? Because last week I talked a bit about my story, but we were going to know more about you. So
that's right.
Where did it all begin?
We seem to be us two seem to be worth a two-parter. So where
not to toot our own horns, so to speak.
Yeah. So where did it all begin for me? Well, similar. I think we have some parallels, as we mentioned before, when in the fact that there's Korean films played a part in our climbing on board the Korean train. I got into Korean movies probably about 12 years ago, or maybe a bit less, a bit more even.
So around 2011, 2012, or 2010, something like that.
Yeah, I think, or even maybe it might have been slightly before. I know that the Terracotta Far East Film Festival, which played a part in that, and I went to one or two of those.
Right.
But not only that, I think I'd been to Asia 2007, perhaps for the first time. So a year or two after that, I was really getting into the films, whether they were Thai films, whether they were Hong Kong films. And then thanks to the Korean Cultural Centre's sort of twice monthly, it was back then, a free film. They had a free film screening, and I think, even though at the time I was very heavily into Japanese films, and I think you were very much into Japanese culture, I was into Japanese films as well as Korean, but it just so happened that the KCC UK were the ones that were showing these free films, and I just got a taste for them. I just, I just fell in love with them a little bit, I guess, like you did. The way their films are very sort of mixed genre in one film. You can have tragedy, a bit of violence, but also a bit of comedy, romance, tears.
Multiple genres in one film, basically. Right?
Yeah, and often people say that's due to the history of Korea, because of it was been through. But so that then led me to. I remember actually kind of vividly, I suppose, coming out of a film screening. There was a season, actually it was 2012, when we had those the year of the Korean directors, which we've briefly touched on in the last episode. We had all these Korean directors coming to London, and one of those films that I came out of was by the director John Kyu-hwan. Not one of the massive bigger filmmakers in Korea, I suppose, or at the time, but he had the film The Wait. But I think I'd come out of one of his town films. He had Mozart Town, Animal Town, and I think Dance Town.
I don't think I've seen those films.
Well, again, I probably would never have done had it not been for the KCC UK, Korean Culture Centre London. Basically, and we're going back 9 years, but I came out of one and I said to one of the girls that worked at the Korean Cultural Centre, who I'm very good friends with now, and I kind of said, this is the kind of film I want to make, because for 20 years I've been wanting to make films, or longer than that, and I just for whatever reason, I've gone down different avenues in my life, and that's when, for some reason, we started talking, and the documentary idea came up as opposed to fiction.
Right.
So that's how I got into Korean culture. Was obviously the movies was first, but what I saw on screen was probably similar to you as well. Was the food, the colours, the Joseon Dynasty films, and also, the neon lights or sort of, what do you call, not neon, but they're the tubular lights, perhaps.
Neon.
And the coloured on the coloured and
very
coloured
colourful
metal panels.
Yeah.
And so, and from that, I mean, that's where it all stemmed. That's where it all goes back to.
Yeah.
And then following that, I was on a plane before you knew it. A bit. I think you said in the last episode that you went for the first time when you went to Korea. You hadn't been anywhere in Asia, and this.
Yeah.
Although I had been somewhere in Asia and one or two places, I hadn't actually gone on my own without a purpose to meet somebody or to make it a holiday.
Right.
So Korea was this kind of, meant to be this really safe place, which it is on the whole.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, God, this is the first time I'm jetting off somewhere to land in another country, which I was fascinated with, and so I went with my equipment and everything, but also with my sightseeing eyes, and then I went twice in 2013. I tied one of them in with, I think I tied both 2012, the October visits in with the Busan Film Festival, which I've been to 3 or 4 times. And then, it's kind of just gone on from there, really. And I've been, video artist for various projects of mine, a video artist for other things, for an event, something I've had in Kingston before with other artists, which I might have touched on before, but also filming events in the Korean Cultural Centre with the Korean Artists Association, and just, it takes over your life, doesn't it? You must agree, I'm sure.
Yeah. Once you get your foot in the door, you sort of, it can lead to all sorts of different things, right? Yeah,
it's just, I mean, and now, of course, as I mentioned last time, now I'm in Koreatown, which it wasn't like I chose to be as such. It just, it was fortune or a bit like you.
Right.
Now of course I'm working on a work of fiction, and it's got a heavy Korean element, which I've mentioned before.
Yes.
So it won't go away.
It's just this is not a passing fad, I don't think, for us, right?
No, I mean, even if we move on to other things later in life, there'll always be something. There'll always be career.
Right. We have so many connections with Korean people after all these years as well. So
you have your own ones. I have my own, but there's a hell of a lot of them
we
also
have some
that
mutual ones as well.
And it's nice. It's kind of nice having this little collective or whatever they call it.
Exactly.
And
we should say that it won't, in future episodes, it won't be just you and me talking. We will bring, Korean people with Korean perspectives onto the show, or at least that's what we're hoping to do.
Yeah, that's what the plan is. We as Tim said, it won't just be us two, even though we could talk for hours about Korea.
I mean,
Let's pick a subject and we'll talk about it.
There's always so many things to talk about, but we want to keep it fresh and with different ideas flowing, and so it's not just us all the time. But we could definitely talk for hours. If we wanted
and I've only touched the surface, and in fact we've only been we've been recording that long, but it's just so just going back to what I was saying, I mean, throughout those years, probably from 2012 to 2019, before everything became chaotic in the world, or actually not non-chaotic, went the other way, just stopped. Just getting involved with different projects, and the amount of films that we've seen, films that I never even would have thought about seeing before. I would have never even, and even I remember even Asian films in general, and especially Korean, with the fact that they had subtitles. I was getting bored of Hollywood films, as probably you were, and the fact that you actually had to sit yourself down and physically in a cinema and focus on the subtitles as well as the film. There was no way I was going to get bored in this sort of some sort of bubblegum popcorn sort of stuff in front of me. It was just and Korean films, yeah, of course, the translation is not always exactly the same as what they're saying, but it never will be. And you know more about that than many people.
Yeah, I think the translation of the subtitles has definitely improved over the years since, since the early 2000s at least. And you have, people like,
the translators, you mean?
Yes,
translators. What, Sojay?
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry.
Well, no, that's not
Darcy. Darcy.
Yes,
Darcy Packwood. Yeah, I actually, funnily enough, or ironically enough, in 2012.
Did Parasite, right? And among many other things. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say. No, that's okay. I actually met him a couple of times in Korea, and we actually did an interview, but it wasn't.
Yeah, we met him when he came over here last year as well.
Yeah,
for some event.
That's it. And he set up his own Wildflower Awards as well.
Wildflower.
Sorry.
Right.
But yeah, so it's just there's just so much to explore in Korea, and
did you have a particular favorite Korean film from that time when you started getting?
Yeah, it kind of sticks with you, doesn't it? When you do. I mean, I have to say, Lee Chang-dong's Oasis. Yeah. Partly because of Moonsori's astounding, amazing performance. In fact, I couldn't believe when I don't like, as a bit like you probably. I don't like to know a lot about a film when I go into it to see it. And when you see it and you don't know that's an actress. Yes, I was that kind of oblivious to it. But this was a while ago. Right. But then, I mean, I think there was a lot of controversy. I mean, this could be a whole episode on its own, Oasis, because
she played a disabled woman.
Yeah, and there was a bit of a, for different reasons, we won't go into in this particular episode, but for different reasons, that film, was a bit controversial for Koreans.
But
for Korea,
her performance was amazing, and actually, both of us got a chance to interview her.
Yeah, that was when we were trying to remember the names in the last episode of those 4 actors, but she was one of them, Moonsori.
Yes,
and that she was amazing, and she was. It was just and the other film probably very different, I suppose. Dong Pari, which is Breathless.
Yes, right, Breathless. Yeah, I haven't
indie
seen
film.
That one actually yet. Yeah.
Kim Kobe stars in it, and Ik Jang-yoon. A great film just because, I just remember one. Even there's a lot of violence in that film, but there's one scene where they're just sitting on the steps and they're both in tears, and that was just like, wow, that's what I. It was just.
That's what you hope to do someday.
Yeah, I hope to make people cry.
Yeah, well,
I think I've done that before. No, sorry about that. Yeah, that was before the podcast.
No.
Had to make you do it.
Anyway.
And of course, you've been also setting up. I've just remembered what you've also been doing is setting up, different social media pages lately.
For this podcast. Yeah, so we hope people will be tuning in, but. Sometimes these things take time to get off the ground, and we'll see how it goes. But
exactly. I mean, I've been doing podcasts. That's another thing, you see. This filmmaking side of mine went parallel to my hand in hand with my website, which I mentioned in the last show, Mini Movie, which is a lot of Korean films and interviews that I've done. But also, the reason for that is. Basically, I was just saying that these films and these what was I just saying? Sorry, we were just saying about Sorry, yes. Sorry, it takes time for people to, and the reason I'm saying that was because I've had sort of many strings to my bow, and so much so that I can't keep up with them. So they've got the website, the filmmaking, the podcast, which happens sort of once a month, if that, these days, and that talks about Korean items, other films, my own. Travels to Korea and Gwangju and whatever. Again, that's the other thing about Korea. It's all about the positive stuff. When I fell in love with Korea, it was all about the films and the food and the culture, and then it was the indie music, and then, as I might have mentioned before, it's the sadness. Now I tune into Sewol, Comfort Women, the Gwangju. The 518 and Sasam, Jeju, and it goes on. And of course, every country's got their sad histories, but Koreans are so recent, it still affects people, and there's still a lot of activism left to be done. I've been involved with some stuff on Jeju Island due to Navy base that's being built there. You know, and but yeah, that's just, you know, it's difficult to build all these different factors and have not get passionate about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You sort
sure.
of, yeah. So
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, we could follow up on these subjects in future episodes because there's so much to talk about there. I mean, the Say Wall group that you're involved with that's Andrew.
Andrew and Debbie. Yeah, that's become they're like a family to me, and they've told me. I mean, I went to Jeju because of them. I mean, in other words. I was going to Jeju anyway, the first time in 2012.
Right.
But when they told me about when I went to this seminar at SOAS, which is very good at promoting Korean subjects, they were very passionate about that Navy base situation. But then the Comfort Women, but then Sewol happened, 2014, and of course Korea was just distraught. I mean, most of the nation. Yeah. Were you there at that time? I can't remember where you were in 2014.
No,
were you
I
here?
think I was either in the UK or Canada. I think I was in Canada, actually, maybe. But I did go back to Korea soon after that, and I visited sort of little makeshift shrine that they had in Gwanghwamun, and there's some booths and things that people had set up for the families of the victims and the survivors.
Yeah, and I actually went. Yeah, and I didn't. Ironically enough, that was one of the years I didn't go. 2014. But when I went 2015 or 16, I can't remember what year it was. But a couple of years later, I think 2017, I went down to Mokpo, and I've got some video art of that actually, where the ship, where it was, and where I think it might still be, and all the ribbons. God, millions of ribbons everywhere, and families. Families of the children, parents of the children that camp out there, no, that's it. They're like a family to me. We still have our monthly. They were protests when Park Geun-hye was in, but now they're memorials, and we have them. Now we've had to have them on Zoom, but we have one pretty much once a month without fail. But yeah, so maybe we should move on to lighter things.
Yeah, well,
seeing as.
Not everything is light these days, but we'll do our best.
I think I probably rushed it there. I don't know. I mean, but we can come back to my story.
Yes, we will follow up on certain issues in the future, and if there are any particular issues that listeners are interested in, please let us know on our Facebook page or our Instagram page for the Not So Korean podcast. You can probably just search that.
You can, and we'll also, that's right, and we'll also put it in the notes for this. So wherever you find this, whether you find this on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, or whether you find it on YouTube, or whether you find this on Spreaker or other platforms, yes, there'll be links to the social media.
So we certainly welcome any comments or questions from you.
A little community would be good. We spoke earlier about. So let's just sort of cap off the show with some more upbeat and downbeat things. We've got we mentioned earlier the London Korean Film Festival and the KCC UK. They've been having every year for the last several years. They've been having a teaser screening of the not of the films that are playing at the film festival. But just a taster of what kind of films could be expected in the actual festival.
Just to get people excited for the festival, right?
That's exactly.
Remind people that it's coming up.
That's it. We've had some good ones, and they've had a couple already. They've had Man Standing Next. No, what was it? The one they had? Sorry, I've got that wrong now. Well, the next I'll tell you the remaining ones. We've got Voice of Silence, which I think has just passed, but you might be familiar with that. There was a talk yesterday, a special Zoom talk regarding it, but that was at Soho. But the one that's still to be caught, which you can still catch in a cinema, I believe there's still tickets, I'm not sure actually, is Samjim Company English Class. Do you know the Korean title? Or can you translate that title? No, maybe that's better.
Sorry, we should have checked the Korean title.
That's okay. Well, maybe I'm doing that actually. But it's on the 8th of July, and it's at 6 p.m. Screen on the Green. So it's an everyman cinema, and It's a lovely cinema, and it's in a lovely place.
Yeah, the Korean title is Sanjin Group Yonga Toikban.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would say that's
It's
correct,
a little
Timothy.
bit
But
different
I'm
in English, the title. But anyway.
yeah. What does it translate to, pretty much?
The Samjin Group English TOEIC company or
TOEIC.
TOEIC. Do you know what TOEIC is?
Oh yeah, I've heard of it, but I'm not.
So it's
not
like
sure.
a test, an English test that they do in Korea. Almost every Korean person, if they want to get into a decent company or something, they have to take this test, right? TOEIC English test. Yeah.
Oh, it's for English. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, actually, that just brings. I might as well just backtrack a bit because we're talking about Korean language. I forgot to mention on my voyage of Korea and Korean things for 2013. I did do 2 terms of Korean language, so I've got I can read Hangul, but there's certain things I struggle with, and nowhere near as good as Timothy here. Especially with reading it, you're better
I'm
with
still
reading, aren't
not
you?
that great at speaking, but my listening's okay. My reading and writing is not that easy either, but reading is fine.
But I've tested you a little bit on my film where I've got Korean dialogue. You've
I mean,
got
if
the
it's
grist.
simple conversations and stuff, it's easy. But as I said, I am a translator of Korean to English, so I do need to know quite a lot for reading at least.
Yeah. Well, leading on from. Do you want to
talking
talk about
cinema, I just heard that the Seoul Cinema in Korea, in Seoul, of course, is apparently about to close or just closed. I think after 42 years being in business. So it's I guess it's one of the oldest remaining cinemas in Seoul, which is it's a little bit sad to hear that it's shutting down.
Yeah.
But apparently I just heard that on the news today.
Was that can I ask you, I don't know if you know this, but was it a multi-screen one or was it one of those traditional...
Yes, I've been there a few times. It's in Chungmuro.
Yes, Chungmuro, that's where I met Jason.
Korea's Hollywood, so to speak.
I met Jason Besheva's there for the first or second time.
Right.
We did an interview, but
he's a film...
Yes, he's a film critic, and you can see him on
Korean
Arirang TV and elsewhere.
Cinema's near Chungmuro Station, right outside the station, and I've been there a few times, and so it's sad to see it go. I don't know if anything's going to replace it or not, but
it does worry me as well. What's going to be there in place? Because much like the UK, this is no criticism of Korea, really. It's regeneration and let's just knock everything down. And it's happening here. It's happening actually in Koreatown where we're living in New Malden.
Yeah, gentrification and that kind of stuff.
We'll talk about that in another show,
Right.
I'm sure. But then we going from films to books. That we had some. This is the news. By the way, this is the news segment of the show. If you didn't guess, so we just finished off the show with this little segment. Some few news snippets. So going from cinema to books, Timothy has some news on certain.
Yeah, well, there was also some news came in that I think it was a couple of days ago that this Korean author whose name I am suddenly
escaping.
Sorry, escaping me.
If you want, you can look it up.
Oh yeah, sorry, Yoon Go-eun. So her novel, the English title is The Disaster Tourist.
Yes.
So it was translated into English recently.
Yeah.
And the translator, I believe, is a British lady named Lizzie Bueller.
Okay.
So anyway, this novel, the English translation was received an award in the UK for crime fiction.
Okay.
So it was named the winner of the crime fiction in translation Dagger category, awarded by the Crime Writers Association.
Okay. And that source is that Korea Times?
That's from the Korea Times.
That's good.
So
Bueller doesn't sound English though. Maybe it's American, Canadian, or maybe it's actually half British and something else. Yeah, maybe it is. I think of Ferris Bueller.
But apparently that's the first time that a Korean novel has ever won this award.
Oh, that's very good for Korea then. And then sort of more sort of somber note, if you like, we have there was some news we heard with South Korea is now apparently on a different traffic light colour for entry into the UK. I think it's gone from the green to the amber, we believe.
Yes, right.
So it's
now,
it's a bit
if
of a
any Korean people
pain.
or at least people from South Korea come to the UK, they have to self-isolate for at least, I believe it's 8 or 10 days. Yeah. Either at the place that they're staying or in
so
their
it's a slight
home.
change, I guess.
Yeah.
And then just to top it off, all these little notes and things about Corona and Korea. The North Korea, there was some news about them having some. Not to be derogatory about North Korea. Obviously, we care about Koreans generally, but I don't know. The news was something about they've had an outbreak. Quite
Possible outbreak
serious.
of coronavirus.
Yeah, it's possible
in
potential.
North Korea. Yeah, but we don't know the details or how many people are affected. But yeah, we hope that everything
works
goes
itself
okay.
out. Yeah. So I think.
Sorry, just a correction.
sorry.
So Lizzie Bueller is American, actually. Yes, from the she studied at Harvard and University of Iowa. So yeah, apologies to her.
There's a different spelling to Bueller that I thought, but it actually looks more German or something.
Right.
Yeah, not that I'm a
Yeah.
expert on these things. Well, I mean, we must mention one or two other things towards the end of this show. But we've got the music that you hear at the beginning and with the outro music is by the band Kaya. And the track that we're currently using is a new Arirang, so it's a play on it's a version of Arirang, as we've mentioned last show, a very popular Korean tune and song from their album Korean Breeze. I did mention, I think, in the last show that they were in the UK. They're currently in Korea, but just to elaborate on that, they are going to be UK based. They're just currently over in Korea, as a lot of Koreans are right now because of certain situations.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else we've missed off that.
I suppose we can wrap it up there for this episode. But so
leave us your if you want to leave comments under if this is YouTube you're listening to this or somewhat watching it on, then feel free to leave comments or just get in touch in the Facebook group. We're happy to hear from you. If you know someone who might be interested in even coming on the show, if we can fit them in or we can work them into a topic that we're talking about or keen to talk about, I mean, then we'll do that. And these are early days, but we're off to hopefully a good start. We'll let you be the judge of that. So
thanks for joining us. And what do we say in Korean to say goodbye?
안녕하세요.
Well, 안녕히 계세요.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always say the same for same for hello and 안녕. That's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to seem like a cheat.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. So thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Cheers.